Radio Wildcard. Let's touch on the Warriors, and we'll see how much wider NRL conversation we get through. I don't really care, but I do have a lot of what I believe are important Warriors ideas to express here. Good win over the Cowboys. Generally speaking, I don't know, and this is a theory that extrapolates out to a couple of other games, like the Broncos were pretty good in bouncing back from their dramas. They lost by 2 points to the Manly Seagulls, but I don't necessarily view that as like a massive positive for the Broncos. The Seagulls,
they blew an 18-0 lead. So.
Yeah, and the Seagulls were a bit, hotchy-potchy, and then closer to home for you, the Dragons got a good win, and you have to, I think the most important thing when viewing those games is you have to emotionally respond. And both the Broncos and the Dragons emotionally responded with correct attitude, correct efforts, correct just energy levels. And that is kudos. That's part of the problem. And they solved those problems. So that's good for them. But then watching the Cronulla Sharks, I was just very disjointed, minimal attacking threats, and it was a bit all over the show. Perfect recipe for the Dragons to get a win. And I got a similar vibe from the Cowboys. Like Valentine Holmes goes down injured. Yeah, Tamiso Habasai Fido was pretty damn good. Like, wow, that kid moves. Looks like a natural baller. Valentine Holmes looks like a pure athlete, whereas Hamaso Tabuai Fido looks like more of a natural baller in the sense that he's just a natural footy player. So when I say baller, it's athletics. It's athletes and athletics. So I don't know how good the Cowboys were. I did highlight Jason Taumalolo's tackle count wildcard. And before this game, the one game Jason Taumalolo had made over 30 tackles in, the Cowboys had lost. The Warriors forced Jason Taumalolo to make 53 tackles. That is the most tackles he's made of his 4 games he's played this year. And now, of those 4 games, the 2 games in which Jason Taumalolo has had to make over 30 tackles, the Cowboys have lost. Now, that's just a purely results perspective, but things get a bit more interesting. We're looking at a stat that I haven't checked today, but prior to the last round starting, Jason Taumalolo had the most post-contact meters of any NRL player, and he had only played 3 of 4 games. Like he had a game less than the other players. So I'll just share this wildcard. Tackles made along with Taumalolo's post-contact meters. So round 1 versus the Broncos, Cowboys lost this game. Taumalolo made 32 tackles, and that led to 69 post-contact meters. The 2 games that the Cowboys won against weaker teams, the Bulldogs and Titans, Bulldogs forced Taumalolo to make 19 tackles, and that led to 115 post-contact meters. Titans, they forced Taumalolo into 16 tackles, and that led to 127 post-contact meters. The Warriors forced Taumalolo into 53 tackles, and that leads to 56 post-contact meters. So there's a direct correlation between Taumalolo's tackles and his post-contact meters. More tackles, less post-contact meters. However, there is also a connection between Taumalolo's post-contact meters and Cowboys results. The 2 games in which Taumalolo has over 100 post-contact meters, the Cowboys win. 2 games that Taumalolo has less than 70 post-contact meters, Cowboys lose. So that tells you a lot about Taumalolo and the Cowboys. It also tells you a lot about the Warriors. Like, they clearly put a target on Taumalolo in the defensive line, and it worked out fantastic. It was excellent for the Warriors, and there were good performances across the board, but I believe the work of the forward pack was far superior to the Cowboys. And I've got different individuals here to highlight, but we'll get your vibe from the Warriors and just dealing with Taumalolo Wildcat.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he looked pretty clearly still a little bit injured. Like they maybe rushed him back because he's such an important player for them. I think because he'd missed the previous week. He said he only played 3 of the 4 games. But at the same time, like, you got to take advantage of those things when one of your opposition's best players is maybe not at 100%, and in this case it was 2 because he had Val Holmes as well limping. He lasted quite a while, but he was limping crazily for most of it. It was kind of, at one point you're like, this is kind of mental. Why is he still out there? But you know, Warriors, I think Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is even on record as saying, like, they specifically targeted him to make Jason Taumalolo make a lot of tackles and just tire him out. He might not have 100% capacity with his energy in a game like this if he's not fully fit, so we're going to make sure that what he has, he uses on the defensive end, and he's not just rolling us through the middle. And perfect game plan. That's exactly what they needed to do. It's exactly what they did. And they got the old bennies from it. So there you go, 2 more points on the board, pretty much.
Yeah, I want to be really clear because there was a couple of ideas like, oh, Taumalolo looks gassed. I saw that, like, different comment sections or whatever. And it was Taumalolo's first game back. But if a man of Taumalolo's stature is making over 50 tackles, he's going to be fucked any round. Taumalolo coming off 10 games, if he has to make 53 tackles, he's going to be gassed. Like, the situation around Taumalolo didn't feel as important as the concept of the Warriors in making Taumalolo make 50 plus tackles. If that makes sense. Like I think this was and it's a recipe for other teams to perhaps grab an easy 2 points against the Cowboys. Like, if you've got a forward pack who can just isolate Taumalolo into 40 plus tackles, let alone 50 plus tackles, I think you're going to go a long way. Given I don't see much oomph elsewhere in their forward pack, you're going to go a long way to winning that game. So I think it was nice that Taumalolo was coming back in his first game back. Obviously, a bit of fatigue and those things, so that did help the Warriors. However, it's also a big up to the Warriors in actually making Taumalolo bust his ass to make 53 tackles. So I found that very interesting. Adam Blair's been very good for the Warriors. Like, some of these running meters for the Warriors, Adam Blair, 16 runs and 157 meters. Now, that is a tad below the 10 meter per run mark. No one imagines Adam Blair taking 16 runs and averaging 10 meters per run. That's not in anyone's imagination about Adam Blair, but he's out here doing it. And then guys like Jermaine Tanoa-Brown, 15 runs, 178 meters, well over 10 meters per run. Lachlan Burr was pretty good. Elisa Katoa was pretty good. Tohu Harris, fantastic in the middle. What happened? Tohu Harris update. Tohu Harris started on the edge, as per the team sheet. But what happened this week, wildcard, was Jack Murchie got subbed on around the 20-minute mark, I think, for Tanoa-Brown. And then Jack Murchie moved to the right edge, and Tohu Harris went into the middle. So we did discuss that dynamic last week, and Isaiah Papali'i got dropped. So it was all a bit confusing. Suddenly Jack Murchie emerges as a edge forward for the Warriors, which is quite interesting because Isaiah Papali'i is just an in-betweener. He's not big enough, he's not fast enough, but he's big enough and he's fast enough, but he's not bigger than anyone else. He's not faster or more mobile than anyone else. At least Jack Murchie is similar size to Tohu Harris, and he's mobile enough to deal with like a half coming at him, a centre coming at him, but he's a bigger body out on the edge as well. And yeah, that's just an update on the Tohu Harris situation. Before it was just a straight Papali'i starts on an edge, Tohu Harris starts in the middle. Against the Cowboys, Harris started on an edge, and then Murchie came on to play right edge, and Tohu Harris played through the middle, and I think I counted 3 play the balls from Tohu Harris that led to a try in the next play. And Tohu Harris also threw a pass to Nikorima that set up the Petahiku one-on-one carve-up of Isan Masters for one of his tries. So Tohu Harris had not necessarily a direct impact, but at the very least, he got quick play the balls from which a try was scored on 3 plays, and then threw a nice little 10-meter pass to set up another try to go with 15 runs, 17 runs, 193 meters, 80 minutes, 42 tackles, 97% tackling efficiency. All those stats are amazing, and he had the play the balls that led to tries, and he threw a pass for a try. So that's why Tohu Harris in the middle is so important. The extra wrinkle this week was that we got Jack Murchie playing on the right edge, and I'm loving this Warriors forward pack, just how it's looking, wildcard.
Yeah, Tohu Harris, since the restart, so that's 3 games, he's been just in the most scintillating form, eh? He's just been so good. And
but that's only coming through the middle.
Yes, and that's been the little secret weapon, hasn't it? And because they keep naming him each one of those weeks, am I right? He's been named on an edge, but he's either played through the middle or in this week, little bit of funk involved in starting on one side and then moving in. But for predominantly, he's he's just been so involved in doing little bit of everything for the team. It's pretty crazy. He's always been an important player though, hasn't he? When he's been injured, they've not been as threatening or dominant. Ever since they signed him, he's always been one of those guys who can bring the best out in the team. But I think we're seeing something a little bit special from him at the moment. If he can continue this run of form deep into it, especially when it's not like Roger Tui versus Shaq, who isn't maybe getting as much credit as he has done ordinarily, but he's not playing any worse, It's just that other guys are playing well around him, so it doesn't look like he's just carrying the burden all on his own. He's still got he would have had 200+ meters in that game, wouldn't he? And the fella who stood out though, beyond those obvious ones, is when Cody Nikorima can run, he's just such a different player, right? When he actually takes it upon himself to attack the line and try get outside his marker and stuff, and it's a game changer for the way he plays. Yeah.
Yes, the nugget there is what I dished up in our email newsletter. So this is the type of shit you might get in the email newsletter. It's just examples of what kind of runs he does. So last week against the Penrith Panthers, I put in a couple of screenshots where Nikorima ran into a cul-de-sac. So he got the ball. He had, centre and a winger outside him, Hayes Perham and Adam Pompey, and Nikorima just ran on an angle towards the sideline, and nothing happened because he was running in an angle to the sideline. He could have turned Perham under, and stuff like that, but it's the idea and the concept of running direct and playing north and south. Because it's great for Nikorima to run, but you don't want Nikorima running into cul-de-sacs. You don't want Nikorima running sideways. You want Nikorima running north and south, which is what happened against the Dragons. You'll remember wildcard when Nikorima got that massive line break. That came from a dummy half run where he just ran. He threw a dummy for McInnes and then took advantage of the space behind the ruck. Then against the Panthers, he gets the ball at first. Against the Cowboys, he gets the ball at first receiver, and it was an amazing play when you think about it. He steps as he catches the ball, left foot step, back in behind the ruck. So there's 2 common factors that Nikorima's good runs had. They were north and south. He just ran downfield, and they also targeted the area around the ruck. So Nicarima running the footy is very important. Most important is what they always say about Kieran Foran. Kieran Foran plays incredibly direct. So when he runs the footy, he's running north and south. And he's got some footwork, got some toughness at the line, bit of skill at the line to cause problems as well. But Kieran Foran's reputation was built on being a direct half. As long as Nikarima's running north and south, happy days. And that's where the beauty is for the Warriors. And it's also quick play the balls. So Nikarima's try against the Cowboys came from a Tohu Harris play the ball right in the middle of the field. Now, a quick play the ball in the middle of the field, that's a recipe to expose the gap around the ruck. And that's what Nicarima did. So, shout out Nicarima. The other player here, wildcard, and this might open up our NRL conversation. I always feel a bit rough after good Warriors games highlighting individuals because, statistically, obviously Petahiku 3 tries, 16 runs, 164 meters. The stats for all these dudes are great, so check out the stats if you do want to look at that. Someone like Gerard Beale flies under the radar. He's soaring under the radar wildcard. Just his work at centre. I think he had a misread or a bad missed tackle that led to one of the Cowboys' tries. But he surprisingly makes meters. He's surprisingly ruthless and rugged out there on the edge. So I do like Gerard Beale as well. So shout out to them. Shout out to all the players, to be honest. Good effort. But the one who really caught my eye was Pawasa Fa'amasili. He had 8 runs for 89 meters, which is almost 11 runs. It's just a bit over 11 meters per run, which is fantastic. I'm not sure if what's 36 divided by 8 wildcard?
4? No, 4.2, something like that.
4 point something. So Farmasili, his 8 runs, he averaged 4 point something post contact meters, which is pretty impressive. But
4.5. Sorry.
It's more about the eye test. Oh, just check out this wildcard. Tohu Harris had the fastest play the ball of the Warriors forwards. So that's my point there. Fastest average play the ball, and then think about Tohu Harris having 3 play the balls from which a try was scored on the following play. The eye test, though.
Is that a stat they can measure? Where do you get that stat from?
You just scroll across on the NRL. On the
NRL,
all the average stuff.
I'm gonna have to have a peek at those. That's some crazy I love it when the numbers get deep into because it's so easy to take. I was looking at a thing where someone was claiming that Chris Wood had the best XG rating in the Premier League, and I looked it up on another thing and it was different. And then I looked at the dude's comments and it was a bunch of people being like, "That's not true. Look at this one. It says it's Mo Salah or whoever, and Chris Wood isn't even in the top 10." And he's like, "Well, different outlets have different ideas of what character," and it's like, well, okay, so it's a completely inconsistent stat. Okay, whatever. But when you can get into situational things, that's when it gets interesting, because then you can apply, not just relying on the numbers, you can apply how does this situation affect the gameplay, how does it affect the tactics that they had coming into it. That's where you get real funky with the stats. I like that.
Yeah, you're giving a bit too much credit to the NRL stats, because all the average stuff I've got to do myself. So you got to do the division to find out average run meters. You got to do the division yourself to find out average post contact meters. But I'm the only one.
Well, they're not going to do it all for you.
I'm the only one who talks about average meters per run. So that's just my insight, and I find that far more important, because everyone says he had a big game. He ran for over 100 meters. If you're taking 20 runs and you're making over 100 meters, it's not so good. But if you've got 5 runs and you're making 100 meters, fucking hell, you're amazing. You're making big meters. And then the NRL, they just list the average play the ball speed for that game. So you can't, to the best of my knowledge, there's nowhere that tells you, who has the fastest play the ball in the NRL. That's kind of all anecdotal. But in this game against the Cowboys, Tohu Harris had an average play the ball speed of 2.79 seconds, every other Warriors forward, so not including the hookers, but the big boppers, they all had play the ball speeds over 3 seconds. So Tohu Harris has the fastest average play the ball of the Warriors forwards, and he did so with the most runs. 17 runs. So that's exactly what you want. Most runs, most play the balls, also the fastest play the ball speed. I digress. Poasa Fa'amasili. Not sure, the eye test here, wildcard, because Fa'amasili doesn't look overly big, but when he ran the footy, he's quick. And you're just watching this dude flash through the middle. He's powerful, he's stocky, he's a bit of a unit, and I can see Poasa Fa'amasili offering great value to the Warriors during his time at the Warriors. Now that I'm seeing him more as a player, I think he's the best forward coming off the bench of the group of Carl Lawton coming on a hooker, King Vuniyayawa, Jack Murchie, and Fa'amasili. Fa'amasili added the most impact, which this leads me to open up our NRL discussion here, wildcard, because I was watching the Roosters, and I'm watching the two Morris brothers run around from the Roosters, and so they had one Morris brother, I don't know who, and then the other one wanted to leave Cronulla Sharks earlier this season to go join the Roosters, and I view that as like one of the brothers saying like, fuck, you got to come to the Roosters, bro. Like, they're doing some neck level shit. It's amazing at the Roosters. You need to come here. And then what do you know? One of the Morris brothers, he's pushing out for an exit at the Sharks to go join the Roosters. Roosters signed Flanagan, the halfback, and then all you heard after the Roosters signed Flanagan was the Roosters trying to sign Bronson Xerri. And I think, obviously, everyone knows what Bronson Xerri could do on a footy field. Like, he's bit of a gun, but I think just in this imaginary world I'm creating, with that idea around the Morris brothers, I think Flanagan might have arrived at the Roosters and then, told his mate, holy shit, Roosters are a bit neck level, they're doing some different shit here, you should come over. Now, Bronson Xerri got into his own shitstorm, so that didn't pan out, but I say all that, wildcard, to paint this picture of the Roosters being a club where people go to the Roosters and they really like being at the Roosters. Whether it's how the Roosters look after their player, the style of footy they're using. Everyone talks about the Roosters' salary cap sombrero, but the Roosters aren't paying big money for Poasa Fa'amasili. They're not paying big money for Sitili Tuponuia. They're not paying big money for Lindsay Collins, who has been fantastic for the Roosters. Like, these are some very good players who aren't necessarily on big money, but they love being at the Roosters. I'll throw a little shot at the Dragons here because since my barrage last week, wildcard, about players wanting to leave the Dragons, then Isaac Luke actually left the Dragons, and I think there was another player, maybe Tristan Saylor's name popped up, or, stuff like that. So you've got an example of players wanting to leave the Dragons, as I articulated last week, now with the Isaac Luke situation as well. Compare it to the Roosters, everyone wants to, like, as soon as you have a sniff of what the Roosters are like, from an outside perspective, players really want to be at the Roosters. So I come back around to Fa'amasili, because I feel like no matter how good Fa'amasili is for the Warriors, he'll go back to the Roosters. And I think it would take a extreme scenario of Fa'amasili being like super duper amazing and having a real, genuine, legit impact on the Warriors, which he shows signs of doing against the Cowboys, to take him out of the Roosters. The Roosters really look after their players, especially, I think, the players from Aotearoa. So there's no way Tokiaho will leave the Roosters anytime soon. There's no way Isaac Liu will leave the Roosters anytime soon. There's no way Joseph Manu's going to leave the Roosters anytime soon. They love it there. And Fa'amasili was recruited by the Roosters, and the only thing that I can imagine coming into factor here is Fa'amausili getting game time. If the Warriors can give him the game time all season, that's the best chance of Fa'amausili staying with the Warriors. But if there's game time at the Roosters, I think a lot of people view the Roosters as a very comfortable, cozy, enlightening situation, whether it's the type of footy they play, their level of professionalism, being coached by Trent Robinson, any other extra goodies, I don't know, but players want to be at the Roosters, and all of that adds up to this Fa'amausili situation with the Warriors that is incredibly interesting.
Because seemingly the better he plays, the more likely he is to then get minutes at the Roosters as well, so it's not really like a corresponding situation almost. Like he would have to play well, but below a threshold for the Warriors to have him in that sort of possibilities as well, which is a strange one